I discovered, or kind of rediscovered, this river just as my son was being born 4 years ago. And that kind of is an anniversary for his birth, as well as my kind of realization that this was what I needed to do and wanted to do as an artist. I think it's an amazing place for how close it is to the urban sprawl, or just the general sprawl of Central Florida, and again, its close proximity to it. It's really hidden behind development and sectioned off. In a lot of places it's just a canal, but where it is left, and the remaining course of even the small river tributary is left intact. Once I realized that's really what I wanted to paint, I had kind of the task of really just trying to explore and understand the place before I just could jump into paint. And I mean it as far as understand visually. I knew there was something there, but yet it was overwhelming, and I didn't know what was important, or what really needed to be there, say, and what was beyond, say, my ability. And of course, even just to get a handle on my ability in relation to that place and to relation to the visual stimulation that was going on. We've had this kind of defined for us by the Hudson painters that have come down from up north and kind of brought their sensibilities with them, that even though they did beautiful Florida landscapes, they replaced the mountainscapes with kind of the towering channels of trees and clouds, and kind of replaced the canyons and clouds with the Florida landscape. I see it more as the vignette, and it's not very often you're going to see a long range view. So as an example of that small place would be some of the small springs and some of these real kind of tight groves that have grown around these little pools, where they're the very intimate, almost kind of like a Gothic chapel, is what it reminds me of. This whole other world is kind of going on, kind of under our feet and under our bridges. So it becomes a part of where I live, or I become a part of it, and I'm kind of briefly sharing in that kind of timeless place. I'm in my studio right now, and the river is down in walking distance from here. A lot of these places to me still are open to their history, and their story has yet to be written. Unlike, say, in other places like New England, where there is this kind of legend already attached to the land. And Florida is one of those places that still represents to me a frontier, as it does to so many people. And unfortunately, that frontier is usually here to be exploited. But yet, that frontier is also here for our imagination and our sense of wonder for an untamed place. The more I went down to the river, the more I realized there was a whole community that went and enjoyed it, and young and old would get together and do what people have done for, well, I guess thousands of years, but in this area, well, thousands of years. So even if we're not there to be able to get out there physically and see it all the time for ourselves, just knowing that it's there enriches kind of who we are, and the sense of place that we inhabit.
I love catfish. I love catfish. I go to my
see if this light keeps up. I missed a lot of this today. So it's a part of their heritage, it's a part of their family history, and there's this whole other side I wasn't even aware of. So to me, I thought the paintings even became even more important to do for me, because each time I go out and kind of just even almost selfishly want to just get imagery for my paintings, I end up realizing a whole nother aspect to the overall area that I live. There is this sort of, say, maybe communion that I'm not even aware of when I'm there, even though I enjoy it. And it's a challenge as well, and it can be hot and sweaty and get bit. But that kind of adventure, that kind of breaking from the normal, does affect, I think, anybody, or especially me, more than I think it does when it's actually happening. And it somehow kind of sticks with me. And over time, this is kind of built up to a point where it seems like it almost is really one of the more important things I can paint, because it's shaped a lot of the way I see where I live and who I am, even in relation to where I live. This complexity in this small view can entrance us, kind of like even like maybe watching the complexity of flames. It's the same idea, you know, when you get entranced by watching a fire. It's, I think, the same as staring down into a river and the currents and the different interactions and the life that goes by, the fish, the plants waving, and how nothing repeats. There's always a new pattern. When I think of observation itself, and I think about the relationship between just our vision and our interaction with kind of a beautiful place or a natural environment that's kind of unique or beautiful, that at least takes us out of our kind of our normal everyday life, and our senses become a little more aware and a little more in tune when we're kind of faced with this kind of complex, different environment. So these paintings are a way of kind of bringing back, kind of going to, for me at least, this kind of source of spiritual power, this sense of place, identity that I think we all can take joy in. It's not always necessarily an escape. It is a remembrance and a reminder and a wake-up to who you were and who you still are, and what's still inside of you. People have told me that when they look at one of my paintings, of especially of these areas, and lately, that I'm thankful, is that it reminds them of their childhood. And I think that's because they were remembering a time when they were, say, just closer to it physically, as far as their height. When you're a child, you're kind of right down in the in where you are. So if you're in the woods, everything's taller, the grass comes up higher to you, and also the water. You're dangling your feet in the water and you're staring down into the water. And when you're a child, that has a way of maybe penetrating your consciousness or your sensibilities, sometimes more than a distracted adult. I think sometimes we need to actively, as individuals, seek out what feeds our soul, and not just always look at the kind of the ugly side of life, or the hard lessons learned. Then what's the point of living if that's all there is? And I think it's important to have that in art, and I don't think art should really ever be escapist, but yet it also can reveal beauty for in its totality, or in its reality. And I think people can sense that. You don't have to be educated in art to sense when a piece of art or a painting has that that history behind it. I think it takes just even more patience, or more of kind of an eye, and not just an artist's eye, but just anyone's eye that is kind of there, willing to kind of see it for what it is, and to take a moment and to slow down and actually see what's there. And these paintings, to me, kind of condense that experience in a way, and kind of guide the viewer to these places, and to show these places through that eye, through that experience.